Thank you for your time. My name is Beitula, and this is Shooting from the Hip. I appreciate you being here. Please keep in mind what we are doing here on Bet On It Shooting from the Hip. We explore human ideas, philosophies, and noteworthy information. This exploration is us thinking aloud, a thought exercise, if you will, jumping into ideas and examining them and re-examining them. You will find we are prone to using adult language when expressing opinions. In keeping with that, you shouldn't believe anything we say. We are not experts of any kind. We are just having fun with these ideas, philosophies, and information, in the hopes that you will find it fun and interesting and entertaining. We encourage you to invest time into these subjects and come to your own conclusions. Now on with the shit show. Slim, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. We got nice weather.
It is nice for a change here in frozen Canada, Ontario, Canada.
Yeah.
Bitter cold Ontario, Canada. Long, bitter cold winter. How long? Real long.
Yeah, at least we're getting out of it now.
Yes, thankfully, right? Like long overdue. So I don't know if did I mention my name's Beitula? You can call me Bet. On today's episode of Shooting from the Hip, we're going to discuss walking in terms of its health benefits, and we've mentioned it before in previous episodes, but is it as a form of meditation? And there's some interesting statistics that I'm sure the average person's completely unaware of, and they probably take it for granted because they walk every day. It's not the kind of thing that most of us would pay maybe a lot of attention to.
Yeah, it seems more like a means of transport than a thing to think about. I think people just have it, don't think about it.
Well, it's funny, it evolved as, it started as a necessity, as you said, for us to be able to move around, that sort of thing. And in terms of our ability as hunters and gatherers, it allowed for us to be able to hunt and to gather. And now our society's evolved in such a way that it's so advanced that walking's almost secondary, because most people very often have access to, if not personal transportation like cars and trucks, they have access to public transit, which allows for them to travel considerable distances too within a relatively short period of time. So it's easy to, so I guess the point is that it ultimately makes it easy then to overlook walking in and of itself. And so it's an inherent part of the way we are. And I've heard many experts and specialists in anatomy and mobility comment on the actual design of the human body, in that it's designed primarily for walking, right? At least from the waist down, that's its chief function, its mobility. And in that mobility, what I'm discovering too, again, and I'm sure that everybody will find interesting, is that how much the ability to walk, your gait, ambulate, however you would characterize it, that how much it's tied to your physical health and how much of an impact it can have on physical health. So it's really, like, in and of itself, it's one of these things that is worthy of consideration, especially as you're aging. And because I'm somebody now who's actually 60 years old, I just turned 60 this year. Actually 2025, so this is 2026. But at the end of 2025 was my 60th birthday. So part of my regular regiment for at least addressing health concerns and staying active, believe it or not, is walking, right? So I make a very active effort to ensure that I actually get a minimum amount, or I average a certain amount of steps per day to that end. So as we were, you know, or as I alluded to, walking provides numerous health benefits, and these would include like things that you expect from like intense running and long distance running, but the cardiovascular health benefits, uh, a methodology for weight management to control weight gain, um, and reduced risk to chronic diseases such as like the likes of heart attack or stroke or even type 2 diabetes. So it's the kind of thing that even though we take it for granted or we may even outright ignore it, the consistent walking has enormous you know, health benefits, again, for the purposes of like disease prevention and quality of your day-to-day existence. I mean, you do a lot of walking. I know you drive, but you don't own a car of your own. So you inevitably end up having to do lots of walking. So for you, I know that it's just practical. It's just to get wherever you need to go, right? Without having to incur the cost of like an Uber or bus or whatever, unless you're actually traveling significant distance.
Yeah, it's only fun when it's like you're walking with somebody, you're talking. That's the event. Typically, walking alone isn't a big thing for me. I don't think many people go like, oh, by myself, I'm gonna go for a walk.
Which is funny because that's exactly what I do. As soon as the weather is more moderate, and and you're not having to deal with like accumulations of snow, I'd rather walk outside. Now I walk indoors during the winter months, so to me walking's walking. And there's many different ways that one could approach walking in and of itself, like in terms of like not just specifically how it affects your physical health, but psychologically, the kind of impacts that it can and does have. So there's enormous benefits to it, right? So outside of the practicality of walking, which is probably when most people walk, is because practically it's a requirement. They need to get somewhere, and it's in a relatively close enough that walking is, the alternative to taking a vehicle, unless in which case they don't own a vehicle. But most North Americans, isn't that the big thing that they aspire to, unless you live in big cities and then it's just public transit, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm commenting more on the whole. In big cities, a lot of people would prefer not to have the responsibility
of a vehicle. So then that predisposes them then to doing a lot of walking.
Right, but I was curious about, there is the physical aspect of like, oh, taking a breather, taking a walk, but it really does like de-stress in some way, just being mobile, I think, and also having a perspective, like a literal perspective where you're looking out, there's trees, there's environment. It's not, it's not this like routine thing. You go in nature and it's routinely different. That's the one thing that's beautiful about it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that walking allows you to become the perfect observer, because you have a destination, but in the course of getting to wherever it is that you're trying to get to, it gives you the ability while you're moving towards wherever it is you're going to sort of just be observant. You don't have to be caught up in your own thoughts. I think that, in fact, like the walking predisposes you suddenly to just be aware of your surroundings. So
induces breathing, and maybe that kickstarts.
Well, it is a physical activity, so you would be required to to be breathing. But I think what happens is you sync your breathing with your stepping. Right, especially if you're going to be walking a reasonably considerable distance, you're walking more than a few kilometers. Then breathing becomes, I think, a bigger part of that experience too, because with each step you sync the steps with the inhalation process and your exhalation, and then not to mention that while all that's going on, you're also dialed into your surroundings as they're changing, as you're moving through them. So you're being exposed to sights, sounds, smells, and even in some cases, right? So it, again, to me, it makes for a really pleasant experience. And I'll be real frank with you, I prefer to walk, right? It, to me, it just feels, it always feels infinitely better, right? So now, having said that, in terms of physical health benefits, the cardiovascular ones, like we were talking, it it it's fantastic for the heart and the lungs, right? And it does help to lower blood pressure and improve circulation. So this is what helps to minimize like heart disease and things like stroke and that sort of stuff, right? So in and of itself, like that cardiovascular benefits are like any other cardiovascular benefits. So you don't have to be an athlete now to have the benefits of cardiovascular training. You don't have to play soccer, right? Which, or football as the Europeans refer to it, which is a fantastic cardiovascular activity, right? That and it's a high demand and very intense, but the benefits of that, the same benefits that you would get for your heart and lungs and your circulatory system are available to people simply walking. So you don't have to engage. So if you're physically incapable of engaging in really intense, sports activities, this is a completely accessible alternative, right? So walking literally is for everyone. Where maybe playing some intense kind of field sports and stuff like that might not necessarily be for everyone, right?
Yeah, definitely for a lot of people it'd be beneficial. Like, oh, I can't run, can't do this. Well, you can walk. If you have knee issues, back issues, walking is still relatively more available
Than running and that sort of thing. I actually, personally, because I used to do, I didn't run for running's sake, but I was really fond using interval training where you do wind sprints and then walk and wind sprint and walk. I used to do that all the time. I played all kinds of like field sports that would require strong cardiovascular stuff growing up, but I have now currently I have a bad left knee that kind of precludes me from being able to do that sort of thing. But it's, my left knee is still stable and strong enough that I can sustain walking for long periods of time. So it's become my go-to as an alternative form of cardiovascular conditioning, right? And again, as a type 2 diabetic, the fact that it has a positive effect on your type 2 diabetes, and it was something that I wish I understood more clearly, 10 years ago, right? So now, having said that, it also provides for weight management, right? So it helps to maintain a healthy weight and induce fat burning, especially when combined with a healthy diet. You can burn calories and reduce body fat. For example, a 154-pound person at a moderate pace can burn 280 calories per hour. Those who successfully keep weight off long term engage in regular physical activity, including walking. So if you're somebody whose chief concern is weight loss, and you're trying to do that through diet as a great complement to a limited diet, you can use walking. And as you can see, if you're walking at a moderate pace, it doesn't have to be fast, you can, in an hour, you can cannibalize 180 calories. So that would be basically essentially turning on stored energy, right, your body fat. All right, and if that's your primary concern, it's a great way to do it. And probably the best part about it is that you can do it at virtually any age. because everybody can maintain a moderate pace.
Right. I was gonna say, in most systems, like in most of our biological systems, it becomes more efficient at these things when we train them to do it over and over.
Right.
So I assume through the practice of walking, there's cumulative effects where you can more easily process these calories. Like through walking.
Yeah, remember, it's 280 calories at a moderate pace. But what if you did it at a fast pace? Then you could expect a higher calorie burn, right? And if you can sustain the walking for more than an hour, what ends up happening is, I've heard it said that, like, if you walk for 15 minutes, it has a relaxing effect on your physiology, right? Just sustained walking for 15 minutes. And a half an hour, it's psychological. It really does. It physiologically brings your body to an easy place, and then psychologically makes it easy. After an hour of continuous walking, your body starts to burn fat to sustain the walking, because it needs the calories to be able to continue the activity. So ideally, at any stage in life, from whether you're children to somebody who's senior, if you have the ability then to just to be able to maintain a consistency in walking in a moderate pace, then you can experience like enormous health benefits. And then for people who may be like morbidly obese, so that's anybody, I think that currently that's anybody's 25 pounds over what is supposed to be their optimum weight, right? So it's usually based on height and age and that sort of thing. So if their chief concern is to lose weight, then it becomes an ideal way to do it that's accessible for everyone, right? But most of us, again, these conveyances that we have to get us around, we default to using them all the time, and it just can make it all the more difficult then to even just walk, right?
But the idea that it only takes half an hour to, like, let's say on average, half an hour just to get in that state of mind where it's like rest and digest. You're not quite digesting calories yet, but you're resting.
Well, you're at ease. It's an active rest, so you're not really resting because you're moving, right?
Yeah, it's peaceful state of mind.
Right.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, so then not only does it have this great physiological effect, but it has this great psychological effect. So it allows for you then to be able to tackle all those things, and you don't have to be an aspiring, athlete of one kind or another, right? And again, I think many people they don't treat it with the kind of seriousness that it could have. So there's a lot of people who are amateur aspiring athletic types who like maybe engage in very specific forms of training, like resistance training, and maybe they feel like it's the only thing that they've got time for, or it's the only thing they allot time for. So they want to develop all this a very handsome kind of physique, but they don't necessarily incorporate this relatively easy form of cardiovascular conditioning, which has, again, all these crossover benefits, and would probably help to facilitate, again, that a very desirable physique, right? Which is what draws most people to resistance training. They're trying to achieve a certain look, right, in terms of the way the physical body presents itself, right? And it's all for appeal. It's all to attract potential partners, for self-confidence and for ego boosts.
Yeah, it's called aesthetic maxing.
Yeah,
I love it.
so for anybody, so then again, so then regardless of what your motivation is, I think that like walking can be a perfect complement to virtually everything that you're doing, right? And it's the kind of thing you could do well into your senior years, right? So as long as you're, able to move independently without using any kind of support like a cane perhaps, although you could get benefits from walking even with a cane or a walker, if you need the walker for stability. So it's stability is the issue, yeah, but you're still physically able to walk. Again, enormous health benefits to being able to do that. So it's just you can see where it's easily overlooked in a society of convenience, where everything, even convenience in terms of being able to get around from place to place, that we kind of forget that we have the perfect way of getting around, where we walk around on them all the time and completely ignore the fact or take them for granted that we came with these legs and this body that's actually designed to walk, right? So in terms of bone and muscle health too, so then again, as you're aging, another enormous benefit, but you don't have to be aging into a senior as you're moving through your adolescent or childhood years into your teenage years and then into your early adulthood. Walking strengthens muscles and bones and can prevent things like the development of osteoporosis and osteoarthritis, and it enhances bone density. And again, this would be mostly as a result of the weight-bearing bones and stuff that are required during walking. So the spinal column, your pelvis, and then the bones of the legs. Right? You familiar with all that stuff?
I was gonna say earlier, isn't walking like a full body exercise? Maybe
It
excluding the
yeah. Well,
arms.
no. Well, your arms, like when you think about the way most people walk, if their arms are free and they're not carrying anything, they're
Okay.
swinging their arms, so it can become part of that whole process, right? So walking's not it's just exclusively done by the lower body, although the majority of it is carried out really from the lower vertebrae to your feet, right? But the swinging of the arms also is a chief component, like for maintaining balance and to like increase, like say you wanted to walk at a fast pace, your arms help to facilitate and sustain and are able to, like for pacing, to keep you at that accelerated pace or even at a moderate one. The swinging of the arms are a big part, although you can easily walk without the use of your arms, right?
Fair. Do you think like really sassy walkers get a few extra calories off?
I don't know if they get a few extra calories, but they certainly do get attention, right? Have you ever seen Monty Python, The Ministry of Silly Walking?
Oh, that's, no,
Oh
I
my,
don't remember that
oh
one.
God, they're so outrageous, like walking that, like, they created a whole comedy sketch around somebody. It was actually John Cleese. I'm fairly certain he did it. So for those of you who don't know, he's a comedian, and they really came into their own in I guess it would have been the late '60s, throughout the '70s, and into the '80s. And one of the sketches they would do is the Ministry of Silly Walking. So he'd step out of the door and he'd take this enormous step that was outrageous. And because John Cleese was tall and long-limbed, it looked silly. And then there he is walking all the way down the street. So I guess maybe like it's physical comedy, but not like Three Stooges or that sort of thing, where like they're taking falls and that sort of thing. It's just more, watching somebody walk like that against the backdrop of other people walking in the most average way, and that it just stands out, and again, entertaining and silly all at the same time, right?
I gotta look it up.
Yeah, just when we finish recording, I'll try to remember to send you a link to the Ministry of Silly Walking, because you can find it all over YouTube, right? Like, and again, I don't know if that kind of comedy will hold up, stand the test of time. I guess you'll have to see it yourself and decide whether or not it's actually funny, or just you go like, that's just weird. But I always gravitated towards that weird comedy. And
does it burn calories? We gotta get to the bottom of
yeah,
this.
well, of course it does.
A lot of effort.
But
really cool.
the question is, does it burn more than, say, like the average walking? I don't know that. I don't know that I can answer that.
I have to see the clip to have an idea. But.
So anyway, so we were talking about bone and muscle health. It does, in doing that, in walking all the time, all the bones related who are a part of the function of walking, they become more resistant to fractures as a result of walking, right? Because when you walk, there's ascending forces and descending forces, like the impact of your feet on the ground, gravity working against you and stuff. So all this stuff is at play every time you take a single step. And then as a result of that, the bones and their density of the bones have to adjust to accommodate that. So the more walking you do, the more walking you can do, the more successful you are at it, and you minimize, the more that you do, you minimize the risk of things like fractures, right, occurring, right? So because the body, again, it becomes acclimated to it. And then if you follow Wolff's law, which is a law of physiology about the way your body lays down bone matrix, that any area where you apply stress on bone structures, the body will create more apply more bone matrix to those areas, strengthening those areas. So bone, as it stands, without conditioning it, human bone's about, I've heard it said that it's 3 times as strong as reinforced concrete. And you can through Wolff's law, increase the bone density so it has that there are areas of the bone that have the density of steel, right? So again, making you more impervious to injury. So you see where this is going, that something so simple that most of us take for granted, and if you took it just a little bit serious, there's enormous benefits to it, right? Now that increasing of the bone density, you may not get the density of steel without doing something a little bit a little bit more serious, like intense, which would be like actual bone conditioning. So like kicking solid objects or punching solid objects. So this is a common practice within systems of the martial arts. And in fact, to improve your martial arts abilities, walking facilitates that. Because whether it's martial arts or any of the fighting arts like boxing, pugilists, everyone will tell you your stepping is critical in terms of your footwork's critical in terms of like how a fight plays out. Walking facilitates good footwork, and the footwork is just your ability to move in and out with an opponent, right? So again, all the muscles that would be required to work for someone to be characterized as having good footwork are developed as a result of walking, right? So again, it lends. The more you walk, the better you get. I remember this story I went to a Uechi-ryu karate. It was like a 3-day seminar in Buzzards Bay, I think it was Massachusetts. It was an awesome experience, but this one guy he was a historian who told the story about this one guy who was that in Japan, and so he was, I believe he was a farmer, and he worked all day on the farm, and then at night he would walk to his teacher's dojo to train at night and then walk home. And he got into this practice that on the way to walking to his teacher's dojo, he would take a sliding step. So a sliding step is where you move your forward leg forward first, and then you drag your rear leg behind you. It's not really dragging you, you're stepping in behind you. So it's a bit, it's not walking in the sense that of like
It's like
exchanging left and right. Right. And then what he would do is he would, with the ridge hand, strike his other hand with every step, and he'd make that walk all the way to his teacher's dojo doing that, and then he would do the training, and then he would come home that way. So he actually he became really well known, and so along that roadway to going to his teacher's house, he's confronted by another martial artist who, you know, exclaims all his virtues as a martial artist and how he's a master of all these multiple techniques and these fantastic abilities. And he challenges him to a duel right then and there. There's nobody there to witness what's going on, and so they begin the exchange. And the guy who constantly striking hit the palm of his opposite hand with his ridge hand, he would alternate, right? The attacker attempts to block the strike, and he breaks the long bones of his forearm.
Oh, so he karate chops his arm there.
Well, he just fractured the bones. Right. So there was the end of that. So again, stepping, and it speaks to the benefit of walking in terms of how it carries over into your ability to use your upper body and in sync with your lower body, particularly for something as interesting as dynamic as, say, combat or you know, getting into a fight. So that's, again, it just speaks to how multifaceted and how much overlap walking has with virtually everything that we do. So again, it stresses the importance of not ignoring it as a way of you know, conditioning the body and conditioning the heart and lungs and the circulatory system. So tons of value, makes it worth the doing, right? So and the other thing that it does is in coordinating the upper and lower body, it allows for greater degrees of coordination, right? So there's all these benefits that again, most of us are oblivious to because we take walking for granted when it you know, it can be a premier form of exercise. You don't even have to be somebody. You could be a self-described couch potato, but if you walked, say, like between 10,000 and 20,000 steps a day, and if you hit 20,000, you're only talking about 14 to 15 kilometers. If you could do between 10 and 20,000 steps a day, I think for the average person, 6,000 would be enough for, like, considered a healthy amount of steps in that day, right? So so virtually anybody could do that. You don't have to be somebody who would be self-described as being physically active. You could be a couch potato, and as long as you were able to consistently walk like that, or walk with that kind of to that degree, that there are going to be health benefits to doing it. So again, for all you people who spend all your time tied to a computer, you know, and that's your form of work, that a great way to offset the fact that you're sitting all the time is to walk. You don't have to do anything else. You wouldn't be required to, like, lift weights and stuff like that. Just go to the gym, walk for 2 hours on that treadmill when the weather's not accommodating. But when it's nice outside, get your ass outside, and, you know,
yeah,
all you have to do is walk an hour away from your home and then walk back.
Yeah, the idea is it's really beneficial, like, across the board. Even if it's not like the most beneficial exercise, it's still, you're getting a lot of things across the board when it comes to benefits.
100%. So, and it's something that, again, that's super easy to do. You're you're designed to do it. So if you're looking for a way to ease yourself into exercise, walking, like, because you're taking the idea of exercise more seriously, walking becomes a great precursor to sort of, you know, moving to more involved stuff. But you never have to go past it either. You could just learn to walk for long distances. Enormously beneficial, right? So this also does carry over with the idea that, like, the bone and muscle health, that joint health. So it allows for flexibility. It strengthens the muscles around the joints, right? So that supports the joint. So you have this external support that now comes from the musculature. That again allows for joints to function in the way they're supposed to, for an infinite amount of times, right? So, and the only reason I remember, and when I used to take, when I was in school in physiology, they would say, like, all the joints in your body are designed to be able to carry out their function infinitely, an infinite amount of times. And the only reason that they're not able to do that is because some form of obstruction prevents that mechanical action from happening in the way that it was designed to do. So and then if you make an active effort to maintain those structures, and again walking becomes part of that maintenance, then you should be able to sustain the activity of walking in of itself for an incredibly long time, like well into your senior years, right? So, and for me, that's literally around the door. 2 decades. I'm 80 years old if I make it to 80, right? So the idea of, like, turning 80 years old and having the ability to be completely mobile on your own without any kind of support is appealing, right? So I know, because you're 20 something, you're going, like, that's a ways off, but I imagine how much easier it might be for you if it was a regular part of your practice now.
Right. Especially since, like, cumulative effects. Like,
right.
The less you're degrading, the less you'll degrade the next day.
Right. So again, it's like any skill development. The moment that you stop training or practicing, then you can expect the skills to degrade. Well, physical abilities functions in the same way, in that failure to use it means you're going to lose it. Right? So then use becomes everything. And since it's what you, at least in terms of, like, here, what does it mean to be human, or why are you here? Well, part of that means you're here to move. Right? Because that's the way your body's designed. It's designed for movement, particularly walking. So that maybe that's part of being here. Part of the purpose of being here is to walk. To what end? Well, that's how you explore.
Yeah, we gotta walk, explore, fart, make stuff.
Well, but it can become an integral kind of part of a philosophy of life that is about being involved and participating and being active. And you don't have to aspire to be a martial artist or an athlete. You can just walk. It's already something that you were meant to do.
Yeah, it's taking your vitamins, essentially. It's required stress on the body.
Yeah, and to a degree where that if you approach it with an open mind, it can be a very positive experience. So psychologically as well as physiologically, right? So to me, it seems like I say this very often. It seems like a no-brainer, but it's the kind of thing that you would think people would take more seriously, right? So again, but in the age of attention and social media, looking after yourself almost becomes secondary to how you appear. If you appear to be healthy, then you're healthy. But appearances can be deceiving.
It's not even that. It's just comfort. It's this idea of like, oh, since your comfort, things must be stable, so you must be good. So you must be like more complacent, more in the couch. Like
Yeah,
it's a culture
and
of just,
which is okay. Like
to some degree, yes.
yeah, like that if that's the nature of like the kind of lifestyle that you've cultivated, developed, or is a result of the kind of profession that you have, it those are things that might be unavoidable. But then the question is, what are you integrating into your life to offset the negative effects of those professional demands or those lifestyle demands?
Exactly. This would be the baseline start. Like drink more water, walk.
Perfect. Get a good night's rest and walk.
Yeah. Eat one less chip. Oh.
Yeah, you'll probably be really good. uh, so over and above all of that, again, it actually contributes to disease prevention too. So it lowers the risks of developing conditions like type 2 diabetes, like certain cancers, and high blood pressure. It reduces the risk of dementia. And again, studies found walking a certain number of steps daily can significantly lower the risk of developing dementia. So, and like I was saying earlier, the numbers, like again, they could be debatable, but if you're moving, say, between 6,000 and 10,000 steps in a day, you're probably okay. If that's the only thing that you do. But if you do that consistently and you're doing that daily, you're probably going to be, or like at least in terms of a form of countermeasure to the stresses of like profession and lifestyle. It becomes this perfect foil to be able to sort of offset, the effects of like a sedentary lifestyle. And it's not a significant demand. It's a bit of a time demand, but you know, you think that people could find like an hour, hour and a half in the course of a day to just go for a walk.
Right, and you're assuming like very sedentary lifestyle. There's gonna be people with mixed, kind of like a mixed lifestyle where they're not necessarily at work, completely standing around.
Right, and if you start with this kind of thinking that, hey, look, all I have to do is just get 6,000 steps and 10,000 steps, and you start people at a young age thinking like that, they'll be able to integrate it no matter how busy of a schedule and lifestyle that they develop. They'll be able to integrate it into that lifestyle.
Yeah, just
and
a little at a time.
That's right, and then they reap enormous, potentially can reap enormous health benefits. So to me, it just seems like, again, one of those things that we overlook just because it's not glamorous or anything like that. It's just walking, right? And I'll be quite frank with you. I love just walking.
Right? I was gonna say it's very glamorous. It's a beautiful day.
Oh, well,
walk. It's lovely. But yeah,
for those who do it, but
yes.
For the average person, they're like they don't potentially see it quite that way, right?
Yeah, we got light inside.
So for it to have like beneficial effects on your immune system, yeah, you're required to walk at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and it may help to ward off like seasonal illnesses and boost overall immunity, right? So if you can find it in yourself to do a half hour a day, 5 times a week, right? To me, I'm like, if you can do it 5 days a week, then you should be doing it 7 days a week. And if you're doing 30 minutes, you could do an hour. Because you could potentially do 6,000 steps in an hour, right? So being able, and that's far better than a moderate pace, but it's something that's quite doable for everybody. And then in doing that, then you kind of cementing, or you're ensuring, access to the benefits of walking, right? So again, doesn't require a lot, but most people who are sedentary, there's a reason why they're sedentary, right? They're probably that percentage that like completely deplores like being physical in any way or shape or form, but they're ignoring the fact that this is something that's innate, second nature to them. It's what they're designed, at least physically, the design of their body is for. So they can benefit from it by just walking. They don't have to do anything else.
I was gonna say it's an extreme external stimulant to go outside to experience all the wonderfulness of a good walk, but I don't think these people see it that way because they're still at the stage where it's stressful, like physically taxing. Going
Well,
for
for
15
those,
minutes.
there are those people. There, again,
Basically iPad kids. That's what I'm pointing out.
all I would say is yeah, but there's people who have already have some kind of physical impediment that won't allow for it. So
Right.
this isn't necessarily for them, but for young people, you could make it an active part of family engagement. Hey, we're gonna go for a family walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get a choice. You don't get to say no. We're all gonna go take a half-hour walk, or we're gonna walk 20 minutes one way and then 20 minutes back, right? So it's an activity that you could easily incorporate with others, and then if you have others involved with it, it can become something that's sociable too. Like for me, I don't require it. So if you ever see me walking, I'm almost always walking alone. It would, I got my MP3 player because I'm like ancient. I'll have it plugged in and I'll be listening to my MP3 player. And it's funny, the stuff I have like an enormous list of music, and what I end up listening to is monks chanting and stuff like that. So to me, walking's taken on because it's become this perfect supplement because of my left knee. Like I can't engage in hard cardiovascular conditioning, which was for me used to be revolved around fight training, and I can't sustain that anymore. But it's I am 60 years old. That's just life. What are you gonna do? But it doesn't mean that I can't have a strong cardiovascular system or and have to succumb to things like sarcopenia, where it build basically your legs becoming infirm, your inability. That's a direct result of not actively engaging yourself in something you were designed to do. So if you want to offset those negative effects, particularly as you're aging, walking is this fantastic solution to that end. And it's, again, super simple, right? So, so in the course of walking, it also boosts like oxygen circulation and increases energy levels, and helps to combat things like fatigue and higher overall energy and endurance. So again, you can get all these gains as a result of doing something that's really low impact. It's not intense, and typically you can experience it as a result of a moderate intensity. Moderate intensity. Shit, like, how could you pass up on something like that? It's just so simple, straightforward. But consistency is key. It's the thing that allows for you. Like if you're doing it once a week, sorry, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not helping out. It's depending on who you ask, and most of them will tell you 30 minutes a day, a minimum of 5 days a week. Right? So, and here's the thing: it becomes infectious. Suddenly, you find yourself doing 5,000 steps, and you go, "Shit, I could probably do 6." And then suddenly you're doing 6, and then then the challenge becomes, how many more steps can I do? How much time am I required? So. I average 20,000 steps a day, and maybe once every couple of weeks, I do about 40,000 steps in a day. Now, I work in a capacity where I can get a lot of that in, while I'm at work. And it's a part of my function at work. So to do my job, I need to walk, right? So you can conceivably do it. So for me, it's just I just get a kick out of it because it feels so good to be able to do. And now I'm just looking forward to the weather becoming more pleasant, and then I can walk outside.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. Like with my way of work, it's pretty often I'll be doing some form of exercise, not often walking, but moving materials, things like that. And when it's winter, I have no other thing to do, like for walking specifically. Like I'll wait until it's spring again before I'm going for walks after work.
Well, I totally appreciate that. So during the winter months,
some winter trudges are interesting.
Yeah, I won't. I rarely, if ever, will make an effort to walk outside in the winter months in the snow. I will go to the mall and I'll walk there. Malls are great for it, but I'm not a mall walker. Although, like I said, I'll just as easily walk at home, walk a treadmill at the gym. Where again you can easily you could pace yourself out in such a way that you could easily do 6,000 steps in an hour, like on a treadmill at a gym. You can, again, very easily be able to accomplish that. But that's a little bit more serious intensity. It's not moderate. It's a little bit more involved. You're still walking, but it's just before you would have to transition into a run.
Yeah, that would be different than most people's walks.
Right, but you'd be surprised at how fast you can go just walking. Again, like I'll never get into like a speed walking competition or anything like that. I won't do anything. For me, I just enjoy it as an alternative now for cardiovascular condition for me.
I was gonna say you might be one of those sassy walkers.
Not really my deal.
just at that pace.
Yeah, no, yeah, can't. So in terms of mental and cognitive benefits, walking actually provides mood enhancement. So walking releases endorphins, which can improve mood and reduce feelings of stress and anxiety and depression, and calming the nervous system. Remember what I said. Mm-hmm. Once you get past 15 minutes of walking, that's the effect it has, right up till like the half-hour mark. And then from that point on, it has this really calming psychological effect, right? So it has enormous benefits. Do you need a bathroom break?
Yeah, I really do. I was just gonna say, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced accidentally, like the 30-minute high or 45-minute high.
I think it's what you'll find with walking is a lot more subtle. You just start feeling good. Right, like it's not like an intense experience. In fact, it's very relaxed. Right, you go ahead. I can continue to talk about this. It's the calming effect that it has on the nervous system. So it does induce the parasympathetic nervous system, so that you actually start, even though you're moving, you're feeling, you're going through the rest and digest phase. So that means reabsorption of stress hormones, sense of ease, all these things. So that's all available as a result of walking, and that's after a half hour's worth of walking. So if you can maintain and sustain a minimum of 30 minutes, then it's a benefit that you can experience as a result of it. But to me, it's so pleasant that I'd rather do it longer. So again, I think most people can appreciate that and would find it easy to gravitate towards that or to that end. it provides a mental reset. Even a short stroll can help calm racing thoughts and provide a needed break from stressors. So it's, I don't want to call it a distraction, but I guess that might be an accurate way to refer to it, that it's this healthy distraction. It's a way to divert the mind, so that it's not all, it's not completely caught up in the random thought generator. So it's a way to address the default mode network of our nervous system, and particularly the brain, which is what produces all those random thoughts. It allows for that to become a little bit more quiet or fall into the background when the focus becomes walking itself, right? So that, I was just saying, with regards to the mental and cognitive benefits, it provides a reset. So if you're having racing thoughts and you're feeling stress and there's stress going on, a short walk allows for you to change that. So it becomes, I was describing it as a healthy distraction, but I don't know if that's accurate. It could be, but it becomes this way to induce your psychology and your physiology, so you are allowed to enter a more relaxed phase. So then it quiets the default mode network of the nervous system, which is that region of the brain that spits out all the random thoughts that we experience. And again, we've talked about this endlessly here, but those are the source, those stress, or that stress thinking produces basically all our suffering, because the majority of the thoughts are self-referential, or actually all your thoughts are self-referential, and the majority of them are negative. So it's a way to sort of avert your attention from that. So it's not that they stop, you just aren't paying attention to them, right? So they're not forefront of your mind. So a brisk walk can actually be this perfect mental reset. So, you quickly see as we're discussing the subject that it's enormously beneficial. And again, something most of us take for granted or out and out ignore, and it's what you were designed to do. So it makes me think about that it, even though it has a practical function, it becomes a form of biohacking. That you can use it as a methodology to address a stress state, to like an emotionally intense state that produces stress and anxiety. You can use it as a way, as a countermeasure. So it again serves all these multiple purposes that for most of us in this accelerated pace of living in these questionable times becomes a perfect foil for. And you don't have to be a well-trained athlete to be able to execute it. You just need consistency, and you start again, like everything, you show up consistently day in and day out, and you start a little bit at a time, and then the easier it becomes, then you increase the duration, and then before you know it, not only now are you consistently doing it every day, but you're doing it for considerable duration of time. So you maximize all the benefits that it has, and we just outlined so many of the all the physical health benefits, and now we're jumping into all the mental and psychological benefits. And it's clear that in terms of just, again, a way of kind of dealing with day-to-day life, walking becomes this readily accessible management tool, right? That, again, most of us ignore or are oblivious to, and we all do it.
Yeah. I was thinking it's interesting because, like, we're one complete system, but this idea of just doing basic functions, or sorry, the lack of doing these basic functions also means that we're realizing, oh, we're required to do certain stresses onto ourselves in order to be able to function. Because long term, if you take a bird and you don't let it fly, things degrade. You lose it if you don't use it.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the idea that, because you almost may get the impression that when I say stressors, that suddenly all stressors are bad, but they're not. They're stimuli. And so what is required is regular stimuli, right? And there's a healthy amount, right? So in terms of stressors, as far as they go, it gives you, if you do it in an adequate amount, your body and your brain, your nervous system respond, and they respond by adapting and becoming better at doing them. So this week is clearly understood, and we've discussed that at length. So what you can do is you can integrate these methods to that end, to develop your physical ability, your mental and psychological abilities, to the best of what this training will allow for. So to me, it's in part the way that we liberate ourselves as individuals, or self-mastery. This is, part of that, the idea that we're a trinity as individuals, or mind, body, and spirit, and here we can address mind and body through a basic function that we're all designed to do, and you don't have to be an explicitly well-trained athlete to be able to gain the benefits. You just need to be practiced, right?
Yeah.
So again, if anything, it should be encouraging and empowering, and maybe that's the point, that this speaks to the idea that all the negative stressors are external, and that we do have negative internal stressors, but you come into this world with the ability to be able to address all those things within the context of you, the individual. It's within the way that you were designed physically and mentally, that you're capable of dealing with all these things.
I thought it was interesting you brought up the Trinity, and the relationship between really is there. What I was thinking about is how the internal struggles or stressors that are noticed are typically from, if not always, from ego. And the external stressors are more or less from the subjective categorization. So it's us trying to realize these things that are external to us and go, oh, that's a problem. But part of this like cleansing, just relaxing feeling you get from walking or being more realized in totality, you see you see ego for what it is. I would assume this seems like one of those more optimal ways to go about it. Like, you go for a walk, you take care of your
diet. I think it allows. I think it makes the idea of being able to change the nature or the way you relate to, say, something like ego.
Like fundamentally biohacking.
Yeah, that it makes it easier for you to bypass your ego. And you're not really bypassing, you're just changing the nature of your relationship to it. So essentially you're not listening to it as much. Like now it's just this distant voice in the background that you're going, yeah, I can hear you, okay? And in terms of the external stressors, they are part subjective, but lots of them are practical too. It's the stressors do come from meeting the material requirements of existence, right? Like, you need to be loved, you want to be loved, you need food, a place to sleep, a roof over your head. Those things can apply a lot of pressure on people. So this becomes a way, again, of managing that stuff without without the individual requiring to learn something complex to be able to apply as a countermeasure. It's something you just simply start doing. You're already designed to do it. You can walk. And then if you integrate it thoughtfully into the way that you live your life day to day, and you follow the guidelines, 30 minutes 5 times a week, you can expect at least for it to help to manage those things. And you can, and the more that you do, the more you're able to do, and the greater the degrees of the benefits are. So again, like I said, you don't have to be an athlete. You could be a digital athlete, or armchair quarterback, or a couch potato, and as long as you could find it in yourself to do this, just simply to walk 5 times a week for a minimum of 30 minutes at a time, you've integrated now this super healthy way, countermeasure in the way that you live your life. I go, there's, why would we not do that, right? And before you attempt to answer the question, most people will be dismissive of it because that's how they're trained. It's not relevant to them. They don't care, and maybe that's part of their failing, their inability to see the value in it, and not just see the value, but then act on the information. Right?
The reaction is like, well, why not? Because Uber Eats, Netflix, I got a corner store near me.
Yeah, but again, all those things, as much as they're there to meet your material requirements of living, they're not, I would say that they're not satisfying in the same way.
Oh, I agree. It's obvious. Like the people that would dismiss it and go, oh, because of X, Y, Z,
Yeah, they'll have a reason. They'll always have an excuse why they can't, or they won't,
but they know.
Or they should.
That's
of course
the
they.
thing.
I think that's universally true. But for most of us, we can't be bothered because it doesn't have any. At least on the surface, or initially the appearances, that there's no value in it, and that's what we've been talking about, is the value in it, why it's valuable, and how it's valuable, and how accessible it is. That again, it doesn't require you to be a well-conditioned athlete. The most average among us can benefit enormously from it. So, and makes you wonder how much the average person walks. And I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I can probably tell you whatever amount of walking they are doing, it's completely inadequate.
Around here, I would assume it's at most half of what you should be getting, like whether that be 6,000 steps or 12 even.
Like I said, based on my age and my weight, and the app I have, that it suggested just 6,000 at a minimum steps a day, right? So, and I consistently do 20,000. And there's lots of days where I cross over into 30 stuff, but I don't. Again, to me, if I hit 20, I'm good enough. So if I do more over and above that, that's great. But I don't. I'm not driven towards that because I didn't want to turn this into something that now I'm like hard driven for it, because of how pleasant of an experience it is, which has been. I like exercise and I like working out. I like training, but this almost feels to me like effortless, and it's a cheat. I go, what a great cheat, right? Like. And it's such a pleasant experience. So I don't want it to turn into anything other than what it already is. Right? I don't need it to be like intense and extreme. It's not required.
Yeah, coming on 9,000. Woo!
Woo! Right? Like, not my deal. My deal is the fact that it's become this perfect supplement, particularly as I'm aging, right? That to me, it's just a pleasant thing to do. So regardless of all the benefits and the potential for what it would provide for long term, that's not what I'm driven by. to me, especially now at this age, and maybe it's an age thing, that the things I enjoy to do, or I find I gain some kind of satisfaction from doing, are more valuable than anything else. So you feel good about yourself for doing it. So, so I would rather gravitate towards those things. To me, that's authentic. To me, that's living a real life. Everything else is you're living somebody else's dream, right? Because it was never yours. You never agreed to any of this. All that you were inducted into it all, right? So you grew up and it never occurred to you to question any of this shit. And then who's to presume that they know what's best for you? We make the assumption that everybody that's in charge, all the authoritarians, that somehow they know better. And like, maybe it's time you take responsibility for your own existence. And part of that responsibility is looking after your own health. And anything that would hit you psychologically and physically in a beneficial way has to be something worthy of your time and your energy. Right? To me, that's how I see all of this. So, and since life is an evolution revolution, so the evolution is a slow incremental change. Revolution is a dramatic, hard turn kind of change, right? So, and life is both of those things. It's not one or the other. It's both. And so then you have to be in that it behooves the individual then to be in such a personal place that they're able to manage all of that. So from the slow, old, incremental changes to the dramatic, hardcore 90-degree turns, that you're able to deal with it, right? So this becomes a tool in your repertoire that'll allow for you to foster the ability to deal with all those stressors, right? But it requires you to, again, it requires the individual to do. Nobody can do this for you. And the sense I get now more and more, particularly with 20-somethings and people in their 30s, is that, that they want everything so easily accessible that that no effort on their part's required. And here I'm making the argument that everything that's worthwhile having in your life is a direct result of the efforts you make in the course of your life. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. I think JFK said that, something like that. So that's why you do it. You do it because it's challenging, because it forces you to grow. That's where growth occurs. It doesn't occur in a place of comfort.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the cheap behavior from a lot of people in the 20-somethings, like, that has never been different. It's just now everything's so easily facilitated. Like, communication across the seas, we got instant mail, Amazon same-day delivery. It's not that people are shittier, it's times are shittier because of this rampant consumerism, to be honest.
Okay, so then,
to be honest.
All right, so then what can the individual do?
Oh, yeah, put down the fork, go for a walk, fucking make a fart joke, and have fun with friends.
Seems pretty straightforward and simple to me.
Anti-establishment, not by definition, but by just how things happen to go when you're having a good time and you're being honest.
I'm finding, like, as I'm aging, I'm gravitating more and more to that. All I want to do is engage with authentic individuals, but most people wear masks.
Yeah,
right?
And that's because there's this institution for it to be helpful. Like, it's not just, oh, you're alone with your friends. It's like, no, you're part of a company. Okay, your company has all these benefits. Like, for social obligations, these people are in this like room with friends who have beer, who have like, hot female friends that you can start hitting on. And for someone who does behave the way you see, like you're saying they behave, there are outliers that are gonna just bring down the herd and eventually get kicked out. But it's this more general application of since things are more easy to facilitate, there's pathologies. Not evil, just pathological. Like, oh, I want to cram my gullet. Hey, we got you for the rest of your life. We'll put a tube right down your mouth.
Yeah,
$3.99 a day.
yeah, I'm not interested. But I don't care that I'm an outlier and I exist outside the herd, right?
Well, I'm suggesting it's disgusting that it would be strange for people to want to stay away from establishments, like to truly adventure.
I, there was a time in my life when I was in my 20s that I wanted nothing more than what the average person wanted. Now that I'm 60, I don't want anything that the average person wants, right? I want the things that I see as having value and that are worthy of an individual's time and energy, and then to live in accordance with that. But that's a direct result of like failure, the inability to be the average person. And I used to beat myself up over that. And now I'm like, in hindsight and in retrospect, I'm able to look at it and go, wow, that was silly. I was actually, it was doing me like an enormous benefit not to be a failure at being average.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, would you feel better if I'm sitting here today like, oh, don't worry, you're very average?
Yeah, no, I like the fact that I'm not. But I don't, here's the thing, I'm not going out of my way to break with the norm or to break with the average. I make assessments. I look at information and then I draw actions from the conclusions of the information, and I don't ignore the information. People have epiphanies all the fucking time. They have realizations on the daily. But the failure is that they fail to act on those insights. So then the insights are almost wasted. I go, if you make a discovery and gain an insight that demonstrates the way you're doing something is that it's a failure, and you don't make an active change in the way that you do things so that's not to continue down that road of failure, then you're not even living. You're just repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That's the very definition of insanity, right? So I don't want to be, I was among the insane. I don't want to be insane. What I want nothing to do with the stupidity of authority, gatekeepers, assholes who think that they not only know better, that their particular position is of more value than somebody else's, when it's basically they're just opinions, and opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one. So then therefore, if you follow that rationale, that you shouldn't be treating your opinions with any kind of value at all. It's just what you personally imagine to be true or think, which is okay for you. But you shouldn't be imposing that shit on anyone else. Now here, people might say that that's the very thing I'm doing here, but I'm not. What I'm trying to do is dissect all this stuff and look at all this stuff, and then offer up a potential perspective that might allow for a change in the way that somebody does something, and how you live your life, how you conduct yourself. I don't want to live like the average person, and I don't like groups of people. It's mob mentality. Humans one-on-one, fucking fantastic. But as soon as you get them into groups, they turn into tribes. And I'm not interested in tribalism. It's either we're all in this together or we're all going to fall together. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in us all falling. All right, so that's the trick here. That's the thing. Like, ultimately underlying whatever we're talking about, this is for the species, right? Are we going to hang ourselves out to dry, or are we going to step up and take on the mantle of responsibility and then do this shit? Get on with like real living, right? Or are you going to let other people tell you how to live? Your whole life, you've just been told what to be, who to be, what your name is, what your identity is. All that stuff is bullshit. All of it. It's not it's not that it doesn't have a place. It's just that it's not important. And that's the problem. Everybody thinks all that shit's super important. It's not important. It's just a way to distinguish yourself from someone else.
Yeah.
That's it.
I get what you mean. And this is more of a bare bones bringing everybody together. Like, it's pretty objective. If you can walk, unfortunately a lot of people cannot, best way to go about your day is just throw in hour, take care of yourself.
Wherever you can find it.
That's probably funny, because the most anti-establishment thing you can say is like, yeah, just go around, be a monkey, have a good day, love each other.
Why not? As opposed to everything that we've been doing now, because everything the way that we've done it up until this point, because it's been so effective, it's worked so well, right? So anybody that would hide behind it, it's like, you're fucking blind, right? And I'm not interested, right? How do we move forward? Now you got my attention. How do we do that? So I only ask the question, not because I have the answers. I know I talk like I have all the answers, but I don't. Right? So I'm always on the lookout for a better answer. Right? So again, how we approach living, what we are as individuals, the smallest things that we can do that can have enormous influence and change and produce positive changes in our lives. It's really up to the individual. You're not going to institutionalize that. You're not going to create government programs that do that. They've had all that stuff. We've had all of it. Let me ask you, has any of it been that effective across the board? Before you even attempt to answer it, the answer to the question is no. None of them have, right? They're all everything's a dismal failure. Doubt me? Take a good look at legacy media and what's going on today, and you can see it clearly, right? We're in the middle of like some serious dramatic changes, right? And it's fluctuating. It's in a state of flux. So how is it going to land? Well, if you're expecting someone else to do it, then you're going to be stuck with whatever conclusions that they come to. Well, maybe you should start coming to your own conclusions, and seek things like personal empowerment. Don't allow yourself to be disenfranchised. Stop feeling like you have no power. You have all the power. And walking is just an example of that. This little simple act and how much of a profound effect it can have. Right? So, to me, it's just, no-brainer. I'm probably going to get tired and I have to come up with another expression. So, and here's the weird thing about walking. So we said no-brainer. It has an impact on brain function. It improves memory, enhances cognitive function, and even increases the volume of gray matter in the brain, right? Much like meditation. Why? Because walking can be a meditation, which is an indicator of brain health, right? Because your brain's made up of gray matter and white matter. White matter, not good. Gray matter, great. All right, so, and as a result of the increase in gray matter, it's probably an intention of the way it's designed, is it sparks creativity. For some research shows that people's creative output can increase while walking compared to sitting. The quality of the sleep that you experience, consistent walking routine can improve sleep patterns, right? Other benefits, longevity. Studies show that regular walkers have lower risk of death from all causes. Right?
Because they're dodging and moving.
Because they're able. Yeah, that's right. Because they're able to dodge all the bad things, right? It can be a key form of recovery and rehabilitation. This time last year, when I was laid out by pneumonia, this became the way that I kind of, it was my answer to the pneumonia coming out of the hospital. So after 10, I think it was 10 or 9 days in the hospital, 3 days in ICU, it just became this countermeasure because I had people telling me that how great I looked. So like it was like my physiology took a severe beating, and for 3 days I was like on the verge of, you know, shuffling off this mortal coil. So so the way to kind of bounce back was to start walking. And I remember the first day it was like the second day I was home from the hospital. I go to the mall because I'm like, it's horrible outside, freezing temperatures. I'm like, mall, go a walk there. I I almost couldn't finish a single lap in the mall. I had such a hard time with it. I was like floored by it. Um, and you know, they have those areas, seating areas, and the mall was dead during the day. Um, every time I saw one, there was a part of me that was going, just sit down, just sit down. I'm like, shut up, keep walking. You got to keep doing this, man. Uh, and I even noticed that, like that entire first week, when I didn't drive hardly at all, and when I would go someplace with my brother, he would walk a normal pace. I had a super hard time keeping up with him. It took weeks to bounce back from that, man. So, you know, movement is life, and walking's a chief method of movement. So not to be ignored or overlooked, which we often do, right? So a great tool for rehabilitation. Um, it's an extensive. It offers extensive physical and mental recovery, right? And can help to minimize recovery times, right? And it boosts material health benefits. You know, again, we talked about this cardiovascular fitness, strengthening of bones, improving mood and cognitive function. A simple, regular walking routine can help prevent or manage a variety of health conditions. And, you know, and all you gotta do is walk. Like, who'd have thunk it? Right? Like, to me, it just feels like, you know, so, because we take it for granted, because as children, we did it all the time. Especially, like, I don't, again, for the generations coming up now, I know how tablets and cell phones are more accessible at an even earlier age. But when I was 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, going outside meant either you're riding your bike or you're walking somewhere, running, jumping. Like, that kind of mobility was like, was awesome, right? And you know, I challenge anybody hearing this that, like, just think back to what it was like, how energetic you were at that time. But you can have a semblance of that by just maintaining, you know, adequate self-development regime. And walking is the simplest thing that you can do to that end, right? So again, becomes this super ultimate, super simple biohack that you were born to do, right? Like, come on, what more reason do you need, right? So I guess we're going to start talking about the relationship. We've discussed how walking can be a form of meditation, um, and we'll just start with like tips on how to actually use it as a form of meditation. So if you're walking outdoors or even indoors for that matter, you start slowly, right? So, but this is true of everything. If you're new to any kind of exercise or regular exercise, you always begin short durations, and and less intensity. The idea is just to give your body time to acclimate to the activity, and then things like an increased intensity, you can work towards that, right? That becomes part of the goal setting within the context of the activity, right? So you start easy because you want to be able to successfully, not just successfully do it, but so you're not psychologically discouraging yourself from doing it. You want to encourage yourself to continue doing it. So you start easy, and then you work towards greater degrees of difficulty, right? And so in the case of walking, it's duration and pace. So you start on the low end and you work towards the, greater degrees of it, right? And you aim for consistency. So the U.S. Department of Health recommends at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity per week. Even bringing this down into 3 10-minute walks per day is effective. So you don't even have to do it all at once. Remember, we were saying initially 30 minutes 5 times a week, right? That 30 minutes, you don't have to do it all together. It has an accumulative effect, right? So you could do 3 10-minute walks a day. So you can integrate that into virtually any lifestyle, right? Oh, something I forgot to mention because I didn't put it in the note package, but when you walk post eating, it aids with your digestion. Right? Just something else. You go like, there's so much more benefits to it. That again, we should be encouraging each other. Let's just go for a walk. Let's go. So speaking of like walking with somebody, find a partner. Walk with a friend or joining a walking club can help you stay motivated. Incorporate walking into your routine. Look for opportunities to walk more throughout the day, such as taking the stairs, parking further away, or walking during your lunch break. These are just little things, right? Again, that can have a profound effect on your health, right? And it's something that you can integrate into virtually everything that you do, unless you work a physically active job, in which case you're probably getting more than adequate amounts if you're like constantly walking through the course of your job, right? So, which would kind of describe what you do. So walking meditation, or another way of referring to walking meditation, mindful walking, transforms the routine action that you do on autopilot into a practice of intentional awareness. That's the significant difference of using walking as a form of meditation or mindful walking. Unlike seated meditation, which emphasizes stillness and inward focus, right? Walking meditation, we discussed this earlier at the beginning when we were talking about walking. Walking meditation uses the rhythm of the gait, so your step, and the sensory engagement with your surroundings as anchors to the present moment. So both methods ultimately are trying to get you to condition your nervous system to be engaged with the present moment, but they do it in two radically different ways. Like there's a clear departure between the two, right? So the inward focus becomes like the awareness of stillness, yourself in the stillness. It's all about what's presently going on, and if it's breath based, then the focal point becomes the breath. Whereas when you're walking, then it's the stepping, your rhythm, your pace, and all the external things that are going on around you, the color of the sky, the grass, the birds chirping, the wind, the leaves rustling, all that stuff. Those are all occurring in the present moment, and they become your focal point. So it's still training you to be present, right? It's changing the nature of your relationship, psychologically speaking, with the default mode network of the brain, where you get all the negative thoughts and all the imposing random thoughts from the random thought generator. So it's a way, again, to manage all this stuff, but all you're really doing is just changing the nature of the relationship that you're having with that aspect of yourself. So the core benefits, of course, are mental clarity. It trains the mind to stay present and improves focus, memory, and cognitive flexibility. Uh, it also allows for emotional regulation, which reduces symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression by shifting the mind from repetitive worry to physical sensations. So, right, that's the key. The physical sensations become the focal point, right? Um, and again, all the benefits, the physical benefits of walking are also integrated into uh, a mindful or a walking meditation or mindful walking, right? So, and it it does. We know we've already discussed this to no end that it improves blood flow, it improves digestion, and enhances things like again balance, things that we take for granted, but you might not take for granted as you're aging when balance might become more of an issue. So it allows for you to retain a good sense of balance, right? As you're moving, real important stuff, right? Accessibility, ideal for those who find sitting still like too challenging in terms of a form of meditation. So especially if like they're high energy individuals or people who suffer from things like ADHD, then it gives them an alternative, all right, to that still method and stuff. So, and I've eventually, like over the years, now I've evolved to the point where now I turn everything I do into some form of meditation, right? So I really am trying to be present in virtually every moment, like that I have an awareness of what I'm doing, what I'm saying. But sometimes I'm only human. I still get caught up and before I know it, no filter on my mouth, and I'm just saying random stupid shit. But welcome to life, right? Uh, that's the challenge of being human, right? It comes with all these enormous benefits and all these wonderful things, but it also has its downside. So part of it is, again, coming to terms with all of that stuff, and you do it through your direct experience of yourself and your surroundings and those that you engage with.
Yeah, it's a little. I forget what that one phrase was. It's like a little bit of everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah, something like that.
It's crazy soup.
100%. So the how to practice, right? So in terms of walking meditation, you can practice anywhere, quiet park, busy street, even a hallway at home, right? Um, you find your path, you choose a lane, and you walk. Simply decide the route for a mindful stroll, and you just pay attention to the environment that you're strolling through, right? So you can pre-select uh, you know, the route that you take. And you start slowly. We've already established that like anything, you want to start easy. You want it to be encouraged by it because you can do it. And then as you get more acclimated to it and you progress further, then you can make it more engaging, more challenging as you go, right? So again, it evolves as you evolve. So something to keep in mind, right? Um, and in terms of like things like, posture and your physical ability, as long as your heel is striking the ground with each step, and then you roll through the foot on the step, and then you toe off, which means that the last contact point to the ground will be the big toe uh, on each foot, right? So you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, just walking.
Yeah, but again, if you can use that as the focal point, like the experience of the heel strike, then you planting your foot, and then you feel the pressure of the ground, the ascending and descending forces, not through the center of your foot, but out to the blade of your foot and then back across just below where your toes are. That's how you transfer all that kinetic energy. And then the toe off is the last bit of the kinetic energy as you're stepping through. Right? So that's like the how to get around, right? Now, focus on the sensations. Pay close attention to the mechanics of each step, which is what we've talked about. Lifting the foot, moving it forward, placing it on the ground, heel strike first, shifting weight to the forward part of the foot, and then the toe off, right? You engage your senses. Notice the air on your skin, the sounds around you, and the sights in your environment without judging them. It's not about an assessment. It's more about the experience of these things. Just experience them and be aware of the experience, right? It doesn't have to be analytical, not required. It's just about being present, right? And then you coordinate your breath, which we talked about earlier, that you find a sync between your breathing and your stepping, right? That, like, you know, like, for example, like, you inhale for 3 steps and then you exhale for 3 steps, right? So in the time it takes you to take 3 steps, you can have an inhalation, then you'd have your pause, which might be a step, and then you start exhaling, and you do that for duration of 3 steps. You don't have to. Again, part of it is finding the rhythm that works for you, right? But you do want to pause in between the inhalation and the exhalation, right? So just simple things to keep in mind. And the idea of redirecting your mind when your mind inevitably wanders. You acknowledge the fact that it's wandered and you're having this weird thought. You recognize the thought, and then you just bring your attention back to the sensation of your feet hitting the ground, right? So, because that will happen. You know, they'll very often you'll have intruding thoughts. Let them. Don't try to resist them. Just see that for what it is, and then let it go. And you let it go by bringing your attention back to the sensation of walking and the way it feels on your feet, right? So comparing walking and seated meditation, the focus is movement. For walking meditation is movement and outward awareness, where seated meditation is stillness and inward focus. So I like both. So I do. As a result of that, I do both, right? So the energizing, when you're walking, using walking meditation, it's energizing and it stimulates circulation. Whereas with the seated meditation, it's more calming and relaxing. It's not that during the walking meditation that you don't have the calming, relaxing effect, but it's not primary. The walking is primary, and it's an after effect of the walking. Whereas with the seated meditation, it becomes a primary focus that you're trying to, you know, you want the energy to be calming and relaxing. And the environment in walking meditation, you try to recognize the connection to your surroundings. And for the seated meditation, it's generally independent of the surroundings. Doesn't matter what the surroundings are, right? So that's walking in a nutshell, right? Like, and it really summarizes like everything that we've talked about for the last. How long have we been doing this for?
Hour 43 minutes.
Yeah, I think we're at the end of this conversation, and again, I think hopefully we did it justice in that we adequately described it and covered everything with regards to walking. That again, you can see that it's something so simple that can have profound, long-term and lasting effects on your physical health and your mental health. So I can't imagine anything better or greater. Anything you'd like to say in closing?
Well, I was gonna say just how versatile it is. Like it's great. It gets both sides of the body, upper, lower, left or right.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, all inclusive exercise, but also that it's so readily available, and people are gonna accidentally get to their steps depending on the work they do. It's not unreasonable to say, okay, after work, 30 minutes, or you start with 15. Like the idea of walking is that it's so simple. To not do it is almost like you're getting out of your way.
Really is a shame if you're not doing it, right?
Yeah. If there's a nice day, it's like you will spend 15 minutes walking, and then by the time you realize it's been 15 minutes, you're going to argue with yourself, well, it's pretty nice, maybe 15 minutes more.
Well, and if you walked 15 minutes away from your home, you can, then it's, you, by the time you get back home, you met the minimum requirement of 30 minutes. So,
Sure.
and it's the advice I used to give to people who would ask. I go like, all you have to do is you just walk. You look at your watch when you leave the house, and you just walk in one direction, walk in a straight line, and then when you reach, 15 minutes or 20 minutes or a half an hour, turn around and you just walk back home, and you've met your requirements for the day, right? So, to me, it's become this perfect supplement to the way that I do things, and so I enjoy it endlessly. So, having said all that, and in closing, I would like to suggest that you question everything, including yourself, especially yourself. Seek balance, seek knowledge, seek understanding. Become a renegade, individualist, humanist, critical, objective thinker. Thank you for your time.